So the first little technique that I'm going to show you is this applied plait. I always was taught to call it an applied plait. I don't know why. It's actually more of a crochet chain than anything else. But it's a lovely versatile technique that we can use in so many different ways. So what I've done here is I first of all have done it in a single thread, and I'm using quite a thick cotton here. So it's thicker than our usual Standerton 100 by 3, which is what I've used in the warp here, and you can see the difference in the thickness of that quite clearly if you just hold the two together. So it is slightly thicker than the warp. And on my first little chain, I've just used a single thickness of the cotton. On the second one, I've made the little chain stitches slightly bigger, slightly broader, and I've used a double thread of my pattern cotton. And on the final one, I've really gone overboard. I've got 4 threads of my pattern cotton there, and I've actually made them really nice and wide. Now, this technique can be used to great effect to outline a border or to sort of just draw your eye into part of the whatever you're making that you actually want to really stand out and pop. And I use this technique extensively. This last little section is simply several rows of the applied plait or the applied chain stacked one on top of the other. And it's given the cloth here a really nice chunky, really sort of thick and thirsty texture. I was thinking as I was doing this that if I were making, for example, something that needed to be both hard wearing and sort of really absorbent, so like a bath mat or even a shower scrubby or something like that, this would actually be a very good way to go about doing it. So I'm going to show you first of all how to do just a single applied chain. Just going to use a single piece of thread and keep it as simple as possible. Now my working thread, my weft thread, is still on the shuttle. I haven't taken it off and I haven't cut it out. It's just going to stay in place, and I'm going to start off with here. And here's my butterfly. And I see that there's a big fault in the cotton there. So when you're doing something like this, for a single width of your weaving, you actually want to take approximately 6 times the width. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there will be wastage when you get to the end, but I promise you that it's far better to have leftovers at the end than to get to sort of within 2 or 3 centimeters of the end and find that you're not going to have enough. So don't let a couple of meters of wastage put you off doing this. Okay, so there's my butterfly. Now, I go around just the selvage thread, and I'm just going to tie it once. Then I take my butterfly and I let my butterfly hang over the side of the loom. My loop goes over however many warp threads we choose to use. And you'll notice here that I'm working on a closed shed. So we don't have an up shed or a down shed for this. We're working on a closed shed. So I think I'm going to do 6 actually. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to take my loop over those 6 threads, and I'm going to pull that end from this butterfly that's hanging underneath through the loop. And that becomes my new loop. And you can see it's almost exactly like a crochet chain. So put my thumb and forefinger through the loop and catch my working edge and bring it up. And do another 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it really is as simple as that. Now obviously if I were using a double thread, it would be far chunkier, sort of like that. It depends on how strong or how subtle you want this little embellishment to be, as to how many threads you use and how big you make your stitches. And this working end that's from my butterfly is just going to continue to follow the pattern. When it kind of gets too far away from the end, you can get your fingers into the warp and just continue working it through. So nothing at all complicated. It's as simple as that. I'm going to go to the end and then I'm going to show you how to finish it off. Okay, so there's my little plait, all in a beautiful line, and I've come to the end. So I'm just going to snip off my tail, and I'm going to pull the tail through the loop, and that is dealt with. And I'm going to cut it off quite a bit shorter. And on the other side, where we began, where we just tied it in place onto the warp, I'm just going to undo that little tie. Just pull it out so that I have a tail on both sides. Then I'm going to put my heddle into the whichever position. It doesn't matter whether it's an up or a down position. And I'm going to catch my working thread, and I'm just going to put my tail into the shed. And because the plait is quite nice and chunky, those tails, I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side, just by the way, but those tails will pack down behind the plait and you actually can't see them. So there you go. That's how you do your applied plait. And as I say, if you're doing a really, really chunky thread, it will give you more pop. It will be less subtle. It will be more stand out. But whichever way you do it, this is a really nice technique to know. It's a beautiful outline, and it really, as I said earlier, does serve to draw the eye into an area of pattern within your weaving. So that's the first one. The second technique I'm going to show you is called sumac. I'm just going to weave a very quick little plain border, and then I'm going to show you how sumac works.